reappeared at the airport like a legend come home, calm, unreadable, watched by fighter jets and men who bowed when he passed. The arrival that should have been quiet ignites an old scandal, a vanished hero, a family ruined, and whispers that never died. 5 years ago he left. 5 years later the graves are a ruin. At West Mountain Cemetery he drops to his knees, the weight of lost parents and stolen truth ripping him open, blood on his palms, a memory that won't let go. What follows is not a cleansing but a hunt. Clues point to funerals staged, ashes stolen, and a web of fake doctors and arranged engagements that hid who really profited when his family fell. He refuses to let those lies stand. The city answers with thunder. The dragon god temple shows its teeth. Black Dragon and a cadre of fighters arrive. An old man's last breath hands him a fragment of the truth. There are darker forces behind the fall of his family, and a debt older than any household name. He moves through the city like a quiet storm, reclaiming what was taken, not for glory, but for the ashes, the names, the owed justice. This is not a triumphant return. It's a reckoning. Loyalties will break, families will bend, and the man who was once vanished will force the world to remember why his name was feared. Out in the middle of the ocean, a huge ship moves steadily through the water, pushing aside the waves as it goes. Looking down from above, the ship stands out against the endless blue, leaving a long trail behind it. A plane comes down and lands right on top of the massive ship. Standing in front of where it stops is a man. He's the main character. He looks calm and steady, not bothered at all, just waiting for someone to show up. As the plane door slid open, watched closely. The person he'd been waiting for showed up at last. It turned out to be the Elder from the Dragon God Hall. The Elder didn't waste any time either. The moment his feet hit the ground, he dropped to his knees right in front of. He grabs his phone and signals to his whole crew, making sure everyone knows the phone's good to go. The excitement in the air is real. Everyone's paying attention, waiting to see what happens next. He kept his face calm and didn't show much. He just told everyone it was time to head back to. Right after that, things started moving. Everyone gets ready right away, climbing into their fighter jets and planes. Engines roar as they launch into the sky. The focus moves to what's coming next. Inside the plane, Yi Feng glances down at a photo. There's a slight change in his eyes, like something's tugging at him, but his face doesn't really show it. He just stays focused. In his head, thoughts start to swirl. No one really knew what was happening. Everyone stared at Yen, then at the stranger standing next to her. The room got quiet as people tried to figure out who the guy was. Without any answers, things moved on to the next scene. After a while, the plane touched down at City International Airport. The two people from the photo are there, standing and waiting. He watched as Chin stood there. He was clearly hyped up. He started talking to, still buzzing from the news. Cousin had just arrived in, and the whole thing blew up way bigger than anyone expected. The government even sent out 6 B-75 fighter jets to escort him. Those were the top-tier jets, the best the country had. Though didn't really react. He kept a straight face, calm as ever, and then just asked a question like it was no big deal. Nobody's really sure how knows the guy is his cousin, but just seems totally sure about it. He acts like there's no way he could be wrong, almost like he's got some special cousin radar or something. The others just kind of go along with it, figuring wouldn't say it if he wasn't certain. He felt sure of himself. His cousin's family, were well-known big shots in the city. The old man from the family used to be a legend in the military before he stepped down. Even after retiring, he still had people who respected him in all the important places, so he hadn't lost any of his power. Yuan stands out as one of the top guys in his family. Even the old master pays extra attention to him. That's why nobody's surprised when fighter jets get sent out just to keep him safe. When he hears about it, he barely reacts, keeping it short and simple. Right then, sighs linger on, in a way that makes it pretty clear what's on his mind. He narrowed his eyes, hiding his real thoughts behind a cold stare. Inside, he was fed up with the fake act in front of him. He was already planning how, after the engagement ceremony tomorrow, he'd show just how serious he could get. Right then, something else caught his attention. Noticed his cousin showing up. He figured it was probably time to go over and introduce himself. Came over and Yuan shook her hand, finally meeting the person his cousin had talked about so much. Standing there, Yuan noticed right away how pretty he was. At the same time, Yuan couldn't stop talking about his cousin. He just kept going on about how impressive his cousin was, especially since coming to meant getting a fighter jet escort. Yuan clearly looked up to him, almost like he was bragging about having such a cool relative. But then Yen spots something that makes her freeze. Her eyes get big. He's on his way, Yi just called. Someone is heading their way from up ahead. When notices him, her heart skips a beat and she freezes for a second. Chin spotted Yi from across the room and couldn't help but laugh. The second he recognized him, all those old memories came flooding back. Yi, the same guy who vanished 5 years ago, was here again. Chin looked at Yi like he was just some loser trying to sneak back in after all this time, and the laughter made it pretty clear he didn't think much had changed. Yuan's face completely changes the moment he spots Yi Feng. Suddenly, it all makes sense to him. Now he gets why they sent out the 6B-75 fighter jets for backup. Everyone knew it was all thanks to him, the guy everyone talked about, the living legend who changed everything. All the war gods from different countries lowered their heads. While all this is happening, Grab's hand, clearly pissed off. He's got a lot to get off his chest. 5 years back's dad got really sick with cancer and her husband just vanished without a trace. When's family hit rock bottom, the guy was gone. Not a word, not even a text. Can't believe this guy is showing his face now, after leaving to deal with everything alone. If it were up to, this guy wouldn't get off easy. His eyes started to fill with tears. She couldn't hold it back anymore, and the tears just rolled down her cheeks. She looked like she wanted to call out to Yi, and deep inside, her thoughts were all about him. Yeah, he left her behind. She couldn't hold back her tears and took off, not wanting anyone to see her like that. Right then, glanced over, noticing everything that just went down. He turns to look at Yuan and just stops, completely frozen. Yuan lowered his head in front of Yi, showing respect. He spoke up for his whole family, welcoming Yi and calling him the god of war. For Yuan, this was a big moment. He was putting his pride aside and showing everyone how much he respected Yi. Yuan got a reply right away. The message said they had the wrong person. He suddenly gets what's hinting at. His face loses all its color and sweat starts sliding down his forehead. Inside, he's shaking. If people found out who really was, things would get out of control fast. That secret had to stay buried no matter what. Yuan tries to hide how uneasy he is, his smile shaky as he realizes he messed up. Before he can say much, butts in from behind, acting all smug. Tells everyone that Yuan must have gotten things wrong, saying there's no way someone like Yuan could know important people. Yuan hears all this, and it hits him hard. The patient loses it and suddenly smacks hard across the face, stumbles back, caught off guard by how fast things turned. Just stood there caught off guard. He couldn't believe what had just happened and tried to make sense of it. Completely fed up, couldn't hold back anymore. The anger was obvious. From that moment, made it clear, whatever connection the family had with Side was done. Yi's phone just sat there in the car, not making a sound. A woman drove down the road, her mind replaying what had happened years ago. When Mew left 5 years back, things had been rough for him. His health was bad, and it felt like the whole family was slowly falling apart. While they were struggling, the family started to do really well. Out of nowhere, Mew got better. His cancer just went away. But then Yen got sick with an illness nobody could figure out. Chin saw a chance and brought in all sorts of doctors, using it as a reason to get closer to the family. That's how the engagement between the families ended up getting arranged. Sat quietly, thinking about everything that had led up to this moment. 5 years back, he made a tough call. To help Mew, he went along with the old man's plan and left behind. Training was rough, but the old man kept his promise. Mew was safe. Still, he didn't see it coming when the family swooped in and took all the credit. Now, whenever he thinks about it, his jaw tightens and his hands clench. The idea of letting the family get away with it just doesn't sit right with him. The woman kept talking, laying out everything she'd found. Turns out her sister-in-law and had been meeting up behind everyone's backs at fancy hotels. She looked into it all and even found out that went as far as hiring fake doctors, just so he could keep meeting up with her, pretending it was all about some treatment. Listening to all this, you just sat there, calm and steady. Deep down, he knew he never doubted, no matter what anyone said. The woman looked over at Yi, waiting for his answer. He didn't hesitate and told her where he wanted to go, West Mountain Cemetery. It had been 5 years since he last visited his parents' graves, and now he was finally making the trip. The scene switched to the quiet, somber grounds of West Mountain Cemetery, where Yi was ready to pay his respects. The cemetery looks trashed, broken headstones, weeds everywhere, not a single spot that's been cared for. Stands in front of his parents' graves, frozen. It's like the ground underneath him isn't even there anymore. The place feels empty and lost, and anyone could see that doesn't have anything left inside him. What was actually inside the coffin stayed a secret. When he looked at them, he just felt uneasy, not sure if he even wanted to know. His eyes start to water. He broke down, yelling out for his parents. Guilt hit him hard. He couldn't believe he'd messed up so badly and let his mom and dad go through all that embarrassment. He felt like he'd failed them, and the weight of it was almost too much to handle. He gets so angry that his fists dig into his palms until his skin breaks, and a few drops of blood start to fall from his hands. He raises his voice at the woman, clearly upset about what just happened. He can't let this go and wants answers about who's behind it. He turns to talk to someone who might help him figure things out. He gets so angry that blood suddenly trickles from his mouth, and then he drops to the ground. Yishin suddenly drops to the ground. The woman reacts fast and manages to catch him before he hits the floor. She can tell he's out cold. His anger must pushed him too far this time. Yishin, who also goes by Yifom, isn't moving. The moment hangs in the air, and then the scene changes. The woman doesn't waste a second. She grabs her phone and starts dialing, reaching out to everyone she can. She needs to get word to the Dragon God Temple right away. Something serious has happened. Both the master and mistress have been disrespected, and now is out cold, his spirit crushed. As she makes the calls, her eyes are sharp and focused, her mind racing with what needs to be done next. No matter who showed up or how powerful they seemed, the guys from Dragon God Temple never backed down. It didn't matter where their enemies came from or how much influence they had. Dragon God Temple always made sure to take care of business. Anyone who crossed them knew it wasn't going to end well. Rain poured down hard at International Airport. The night was busy, with people from the Dragon God Temple making their way through the crowds. Out in the middle of everything, a man stood alone, barely moving as the rain kept coming down. The airport lights reflected off the wet ground, and the whole place had that late-night vibe where everyone just wanted to get home. Lee, the commander-in-chief of the Southern Region Battle Department, stood there, watching everything unfold. He realized that all the top fighters from the Dragon God Temple, guys way above the Battle King level, had shown up in. If they all got together, their strength would be enough to wipe out a whole country without much trouble. Things had gotten real. Starts to freak out, his mind racing as he looks for what to do next. Everyone turned to the Black Dragon, confused about what was going on. The sudden chaos had everyone on edge, and all eyes were on the dragon, waiting for some kind of answer. The dragon grabs him, looking really angry. He tells him that someone messed with his parents' graves, and now Spirit is hurt. Because of that, has fallen into a coma. The dragon wonders if they should have come sooner. Then he gives orders to everyone around. Everyone turned to look at Lee. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. His mind raced, trying to figure out how something like this could have happened, and who was behind it. The dragon knocked him back hard, making it clear that he wanted payback for everyone from the Dragon God Temple. Right after that, another guy from the group stepped up, basically warning him to think twice if he knew what was good for him. Lee could feel the tension in the room. The warning was clear, and he understood it was best to keep his distance from whatever was going on. He lowered his head, showing respect, and let everyone know he wouldn't get in the way. Still, he quietly promised to help out if he could, but only from the sidelines. As they head out, Lee can't help but worry about the city. He looks back, uneasy, thinking about how might not survive what's coming. The thought sticks with him, making him wonder if there's anything he could have done differently. The scene moves into a VIP room at the Royal Court Entertainment Club. There's a party going on and the place is buzzing. Music's loud, lights are flashing, and everyone seems to be having a good time. Young Master is sitting with a group, clearly calling the shots. When he mentions that he's covering everything tonight, the mood lifts even more. People get up, start dancing, and the energy in the room picks up. One of the girls sitting close to leans in, catching his attention. Looked pretty happy that day, grinning wider than usual. He'd been through some tough stuff at work lately, especially with his company running low on cash. But out of nowhere, things took a crazy turn. A major sponsor showed up and promised to give him $5 million just for helping out in a really weird way, digging a grave. Couldn't help but laugh about how random life could get. As he was digging the grave, his stomach started acting up out of nowhere. He ended up going to the bathroom in the grave not once but twice. He even snapped a picture of it and sent it to the sponsor. The sponsor liked it so much that he sent over 100 million without any hesitation. Meanwhile, a few of his followers hung around nearby, watching everything. Everyone knew that with that 100 million, Young Master's company would blow up fast and hit the market. Some people started thinking it was smart to stick close to him and not let him out of their sight. They could see he wasn't just lucky. He actually had real skills. If someone was his sponsor, they'd probably want to invest even more. One of the girls nearby looked really impressed, grinning at like he was some kind of celebrity. She even wished she could have a red enclave just like him. Couldn't help but laugh, shrugging like he was giving in to the crowd. It looked like everyone was about to score a red enclave tonight. Just as things started to heat up, the club door creaked open, grabbing everyone's attention. He walked in with Black Dragon and a woman by his side. Couldn't hide his anger. He glared at the strangers in his space, clearly annoyed and demanding answers, wanting to know who they were and how they even got in. He moves closer and sits right in front of the guy, totally serious. There's no messing around. He wants answers, and he wants them fast. Without waiting, he slams a knife into the table, making it clear he's not playing games. All eyes are on him, and everyone can feel the tension in the air. The guy shouts, demanding to know who this stranger is. He doesn't look scared, even with the knife pointed at him. He stands his ground, acting like the knife doesn't bother him at all. Black Dragon doesn't say anything back. He yanked the knife out and jammed it right into his thigh. Froze, pain shooting through his leg. The rest of the guys tensed up, watching what would happen next. His crew scattered in all directions, yelling about murder as they ran. Behind them, the Black Dragon let out a deep, angry roar. His hands shook as he broke down, tears running down his face. It all hit him at once, was behind everything. Regret and fear tangled up inside him. Could barely think straight, desperate for someone to forgive him. He didn't want things to end like this. He didn't want to die. Stood up, his face tight with anger. He wanted to know where his parents' ashes were. Looked scared and started to stumble over his words. He explained that had told him to give the ashes to someone else, so he just handed them over and they were taken away. Turns to go, but Black Dragon calls out from behind, making it clear he wants to stick around for a little longer. Catches the message and reacts fast, but instead of agreeing, his response is desperate. He'd rather end things now than draw it out. The scene cuts away. leaving the tension hanging in the air. At the family's big house, a bunch of people were already hanging around, waiting for something to happen. The place was buzzing, but then the head of the family stepped up and signaled for everyone to quiet down. Everyone got the hint right away. Someone important was about to show up. People started heading outside, wanting to be part of the welcome. In the middle of all this, someone in the crowd raised a question, curiosity hanging in the air. Mr. stood up than usual, acting way more serious than normal. The reason? He just heard that someone from the famous family in the capital was on their way. Not just anyone either, himself was coming. It was pretty clear why Mr. was all worked up about it. Everyone caught off guard. Mr. Yeah, that's the same guy who leads the family group. The family runs the biggest company in all of, and their leader used to be a big deal in the military. Clearly, there's some serious history between the and families. Otherwise, nobody can figure out why would show up to an engagement himself. Mr. has his own thoughts about it. He thought about how this whole banquet was set up just to let everyone know that the family was now supporting the family. From here on out, the family was going to get stronger and start leaving all the other big families in behind. With showing up soon, things were about to change. Mr. steps forward to greet, knowing that the trip must have worn him out. He offers a hand to Sheik, showing respect and making sure everyone feels welcome. Reached out his hand, but you didn't even look at him. Mr. just stands there frozen for a second. His phone buzzes, someone's calling him. Hears his name and glances over his shoulder. Is standing there with him. Couldn't believe what was happening to his people. Anger burned in his eyes as he stood tall, not holding anything back. He let out a loud, furious scream, daring anyone to come closer, ready to fight until the end. The boss didn't waste any time. He pointed at Yi, telling his guys and the security team to go after him, promising a 5 million reward to whoever took Yi out. The security team immediately charged at Yi, ready to take him down. But Yi wasn't just going to stand there and let it happen. The men didn't hold back. They took down the guards and started beating them up right there. Even's guys can't do anything about it. Wan Chin sees this and he just freezes up, completely caught off guard. Panic hits him hard and he can't help but let out a scream. Anger burned in the room. Someone looked at like he was just playing pretend, thinking he could actually take on real trouble with a crew of wannabes. It didn't seem like understood how serious things were. Messing with the family was basically the same as messing with a family. The threat was real, and the message was clear. If you cross them, you might not even see what hits you. Looked up with a sly grin when he heard the name family. Right then, something changed in the room, like everyone started paying a little more attention. The family all bow their heads to, showing their respect. Stands there, frozen for a second. He can't believe what he's seeing. This just doesn't seem possible to him. Mr. was caught off guard when he learned that the Lin family actually knew who he was. The attendants from the family responded, showing respect as they noticed who had arrived. Took the lead, stepping up to face the newcomer. Stepped forward and gave a respectful salute, representing his family from the capital. He let everyone know his father had sent him here to serve the Lord and follow whatever orders came his way. Listened, taking in what had just said. Yifeng gave a respectful nod, remembering the last time he'd met Master. He made a mental note to send his greetings when he got back. With that, he turned to leave, while the others bowed politely and answered the Lord. He gives Black Dragon a signal to clear everyone out. Black Dragon gets the message right away. Wan Qing starts to turn around. Yuan's cousin walked over looking annoyed. Earlier that day, Yuan had told him he'd mixed someone up for another person. Now the cousin was sure Yuan had made a mistake. He turned to Mr., asking him to double-check and not get fooled by Yuan's confusion. The cousin didn't think much of the guy in question, just called him a nobody, definitely not someone important. In his eyes, this so-called Black Dragon was just a regular guy with no skills or status. Without warning, he swings an iron pipe and hits the ground hard, rolling around and yelling in pain. His dad rushes over, trying to pick him up as fast as he can. Song Yen's father couldn't hold back his anger, had embarrassed his son in front of everyone, and that was something he just couldn't let slide. He made it clear that was in serious trouble now. If anyone tried to step in, his father was ready to go up against them, no matter what. Yuan snaps back, clearly annoyed. He doesn't like anyone talking to his dad that way. His father keeps it together, staying calm even though things are tense. He makes it clear to Song Yen that from now on, the family is taking control of what happens next. Lost his cool. He stared at, annoyed that acted like he ran everything just because he was now in charge of the family group. Wasn't about to let that slide. He pulled out his phone, ready to call old Master and spill everything. Didn't even flinch. He just watched, calm as ever, while dialed the number. He stood his ground, his eyes cold. Deep down, he couldn't believe someone would try and call him out like that, especially when he had backup in the Lin family. He wasn't about to let anyone walk all over him. If things got out of hand, he wasn't afraid to push back, even if it meant being harsh. Black Dragon grabbed a chair and set it up for, making making sure it was in the right spot. Took a seat while Mr. grabbed his phone and started dialing. He was clearly frustrated, raising his voice as he spoke. He explained that it was his son's engagement party and that some members of the family were there as guests. But now, his nephew was making a scene and bringing strangers into the house, causing problems right in the middle of everything. Someone picked up the phone and told to apologize to his older brother. Answered back, saying he was just doing what his dad told him to do. His uncle paused for a second and said he'd make a call to sort things out. After the call, the person on the other end started yelling at Mr. The words hit hard, basically telling him that if he wanted to mess up his own life, he should do it alone and not bring anyone else down with him. They made it clear that the people Mr. had crossed were serious trouble, and the family wanted no part of it. For a second, Mr. just sat there, stunned. It took him a moment to even process what just happened. Foam looked over at Mr., his face all serious. He just wanted to make sure the call was finished. He stared down at the guy in front of him, not really sure if he deserved another chance. The way things had gone, nobody would blame him for not holding back. But something made him pause, thinking about whether this dude was really worth the trouble, or if letting him go would come back to bite him later. Couldn't keep it together anymore. He got loud, trying to get through to, hoping he'd back off. This was just an engagement, nothing worth getting this worked up over. But wasn't having any of it. He was focused on one thing, getting his parents' ashes back. Black Dragon stepped in, pointing at something, making the tension in the room rise even more. Everyone turned to look at. The guy talking pointed right at him, making it clear he was the one responsible for sending people to mess with his master's parents' graves. Not only had they stolen the urns with the ashes, but they also trashed them on purpose. The anger in the room was obvious. This wasn't something anyone could just walk away from. Even if someone powerful showed up, it wouldn't make a difference. The speaker wanted revenge, hoping that would finally give his master's parents some peace. As the words hung in the air, Mr. froze, taking in the seriousness of what was happening. Completely lost his temper and slapped his son, not holding back at all. He couldn't believe what his son had done and was furious, thinking it would ruin their family. He pushed his son to admit everything, not giving him any way out. He dropped down onto his knees. The son quickly started to. He dropped to his knees, desperate, hoping for forgiveness. He wanted one more shot to set things right. If that wasn't enough, he was ready to accept whatever happened next, even if it meant losing everything his family owned or even his life. He started to panic, stumbling over his words, scared that he'd said something wrong. He definitely didn't mean to insult anyone. Mr. reached out and grabbed his arm. His father grabbed him by the collar, his face twisted with anger. He demanded to know where the ashes were, his voice rising as he pulled his son closer. The room felt tense, heavy with questions no one wanted to answer. Walked over to his dad and gave him something. The man stared at what was in front of him. He turned to his son, his mind racing. All he wanted was for both of them to make it out of this mess in one piece. He was hoping he could strike some kind of deal so that he and his son could stay alive. He just stared back, not saying anything. There was this look in his eyes, like he was wondering why anyone would even try to negotiate with him. It was pretty clear he didn't think anyone else had the right to challenge him or make deals. He passed a piece of paper to Black Dragon, letting him know it had something to do with what really happened to his parents. Black Dragon listened, trying to take it all in. Right then, you got so mad it felt like he could explode. He clenched his fists so tight that his knuckles turned white. He gripped the chair and pushed himself up. When got up too, Mr.'s hands shook. He watched carefully, probably hoping for some kind of deal, but stood firm, making it clear he wasn't planning to hurt Mr. no matter what. The tension hung in the air, but it was obvious had already made up his mind. Kept going with his story. He remembered how, 5 years earlier, some weird old guy had shown up out of nowhere and asked him to make a deal. But before anything happened, the man gave him a condition. Within a month, his whole family would end up losing everything. Ephone wanted to know what the old man looked like, and Mr. was curious too. He stood there tall and pretty hard to miss, with white hair that somehow didn't make him look old at all. His face was young, almost like he didn't age, and he always had this blood-red garland hanging from his hand. When the news reached him, his anger grew stronger. He clenched his fists so tightly that blood started to drip from his hands. Seeing that red, he recognized it right away. The old man always wore it, and now there was no doubt in his mind about who it was. He couldn't understand why it had to be him out of everyone. With all the people out there, he kept wondering why this was happening to him. Frustration built up, and he let it out with a loud yell. He let out his spiritual energy, and for a second everything felt tense. All this time, 5 years had gone by, and he realized he'd been living a lie. Mr.'s hands shook as he tried to keep it together, glancing over at the Lord, hoping for some clue. He couldn't help but wonder if the Lord recognized this guy. Mr. answered without showing much emotion. He made it clear this wasn't anyone else's business and told them to keep going. Then, he continued with what he had to say. His family was known throughout the royal court as top doctors. His dad was famous across the whole country for his medical skills. People always talked about their needle technique. It was something special, something most people didn't really understand. But then one day, an old man showed up and warned that his family would be wiped out. Back then, it just sounded unreal. Why would anyone believe something like that? Later on, his dad made a mistake with a patient that ended up costing someone someone their life. Not long after, people started saying the clinic was selling fake meds. Things went downhill fast. The clinic got closed, and his dad was in serious trouble with the law. Later on, he went up to the old man and tried to find out if he was the reason all that stuff happened to his family. The old guy didn't really give a straight answer. He just made it sound like some things in life are just meant to happen, no matter what anyone does. After that, he fixed Mew's sickness, but then claimed all the praise for himself. He told me to get friendly with the family. Once I got in touch with Mew, the whole family's business started to fall into my hands. Mr. Wan had just told Yi something heavy, that the deaths of Yi's parents were linked to that old man. It hit Yi hard. Without saying anything, he reached over and took the paper from Black Dragon. He opened the letter and started reading. It said the ashes had been sent to this place. There was also something about a hand. His eyes narrowed at the handwriting. He knew right away it belonged to the old man, and that just made his blood boil. He couldn't help but wonder where the old guy had disappeared to. Just then, Mr. came over and helped him up. He looked over at his son, feeling unsure. He explained that someone else had taken the ashes, and he honestly had no idea where the man was now. Even his son was left in the dark. All he wanted was for them to be left out of the whole thing. Home just looked back at Heelong, totally calm, like he had everything under control. It was clear he was handing things over, letting Heelong know it was his move now. Black Dragon just grinned and gave a quick nod, letting everyone know he was ready to take care of things. He looked confident, not bothered at all by what was coming. Yelled out, his nerves shot. He remembered his promise that they wouldn't get hurt, but Black Dragon wasn't slowing down. He kept walking toward them, his eyes icy and his face looking ready for trouble. Just looked over, not saying anything. He leaned back, his voice calm. He promised not to kill, but he never said his crew would let anyone off the hook. After that, things took a turn. Screams echoed around, but he just stood there silent. His mind was racing back to what happened 5 years ago. He wondered if that old guy was behind it all, if he was really the one who did that awful thing. Or maybe it was actually a girl. Out of nowhere, a girl burst into the room, clearly scared. She rushed over to Yi Xin, trying to catch her breath, and broke the news. Something serious had happened to Mew. He was suddenly taken to the hospital, and Yi Xin's wife had gone with him. His expression shifted, turning all business. He knew they needed to get to the hospital right away. The scene changed, moving on as they headed out. The scene moves over to the hospital emergency room. Stands by the doctor, his nerves on edge as he waits for answers. The doctor lets him know that there's a big blood clot behind his dad's head, and things aren't looking good. Can tell just how serious the situation is, and he feels the weight of what might come next. A critical condition alert popped up on the screen. His eyes widened, locked on the message, and he froze, trying to process what it meant. While Yen talks, his mind drifts, lost in worry. Deep down, he's desperate, thinking about what could have gone wrong. He just wants someone to help his dad. The doctor explains that only the hospital director is able to help in this situation. He offers to talk to the director, but mentions it'll cost something. Could see what was going on, and he wasn't impressed. He just wanted to get to the point, so he offered money, hoping that would solve everything right away. He reached out and took her hand, his gaze steady. Money wasn't something he cared about right now. What really mattered to him was her, and he wanted her to get that. The doctor lost his temper and slapped him across the face. His voice rose, showing just how mad he was. The doctor couldn't believe it when he got hit. He looked stunned for a second, realizing what just happened. Then, without hesitating, he reached out and grabbed. Yen gets called out, and the guy warns her that he could tell the disciplinary team what she did. He tells her to get ready for some serious trouble. At that moment, things start to get tense. As soon as walks in, he heads straight over and wants to know what's going on. Someone mentioned sending his wife to jail, and that made things tense. But as soon as the doctor saw the e-phone, he let go right away. Yen spotted him and called out. That made the doctor pause and turn around. He watched her glare at him, accusing him all over again. Then, out of nowhere, she hit him. He just stood there, stunned. She actually struck a doctor. Wasn't that illegal? Shouldn't she get in trouble for that? Kept his voice steady, making it clear he meant what he said. He wanted everyone to know that his wife never hit anyone unless there was a real reason for it. Just then, attention snapped to him, the mood in the room shifting. En's dad stands up fast, his voice booming through the room. He looks intense, almost like he's about to explode. Yen heads over to him, probably trying to calm things down before they get worse. She tried to calm him down, but her dad broke down in tears. He said someone had threatened him and messed with Junior, calling the guy a monster. When he heard that, his eyes went cold. Flash stared at him, his eyes cold. He'd seen the way the doctor looked at his girlfriend, and he didn't like it one bit. The doctor's face went pale. He started to freak out, realizing he might have messed with the wrong guy. E-phone started walking over, making things tense. Everyone's attention shifted, wondering what would happen next. He steps in and lands a solid kick, making it clear he's not messing around. The threat is serious. He's not going to let this end quietly. The doctor. He stumbles out of the room, backing away as steps closer. The man's eyes filled with tears as he backed away, clearly not wanting anyone near him. The guy stared straight ahead, his face full of pride. He looked like someone who thought he owned the place, dropping hints about his dad being a big deal in city government. The way he carried himself, it was clear he believed nothing could touch him. Meanwhile, name hung in the air, the threat obvious even without words. Tension built up in the room, and everyone could feel the warning behind his glare. He keeps coming closer with this sneaky grin on his face, then steps forward with confidence, and he looked around, sizing up the others, thinking this challenge was about to get serious. Deep down, he was ready to see who would stand out the most, even if things were about to get rough. The game was on, and everyone knew it wasn't just about winning. It was about leaving an impression. The man lets out a loud yell, grabbing at his leg. It looks like something's seriously wrong, maybe it's even broken. Nobody really knew what happened. More doctors hurried over when they saw the man, noticing right away that he'd been beaten up pretty badly. Everyone was tense, wondering if he was going to make it. They focused on getting him into emergency care as fast as possible, alerting the hospital leaders and letting the disciplinary team know what was going on. The girl turned to, waiting for his reaction. He looked at the situation, unsure if he should step in or just watch from the sidelines. He wondered if it was his job to take care of things this time, or if someone else would handle it. The choice wasn't clear, but the responsibility felt like it might land on him. Suddenly, someone yelled from the other room. His dad sounded off, and it immediately made his heart race. He felt this uneasy worry, hoping nothing serious was going on. Her dad's eyes shut, and she started crying, rushed over to be by her side. He motioned to the girl, signaling her to shut the door. He had to get started with the acupuncture right away. She heads over and closes the door behind her. 2 more people are already inside. The doctors stood outside the room, looking serious. One of them turned to the director and pointed out that this situation had gone way past a simple argument about medicine. People were calling it attempted murder, and everyone was tense. If the punishment wasn't harsh, nobody would feel safe being a doctor anymore. Even the director looked stressed, probably wondering how things had gotten this out of control. He peeks inside and suddenly stops in his tracks. He sees helping out, and it catches him off guard. The director looked over at the man and suddenly understood what was happening. This was it, the fire he'd been worried about. At the edge of the mountain, something strange happened. Guanan's ghostly hand reached out, almost like it was tapping at a door nobody could see. Was already ahead of the game, having stuck a few needles into place. His moves turned the whole situation into something even more intense. Suddenly, everything changed. Out of nowhere, the dead started coming back like something out of a wild video game. Lights flashed, turning everything bright for a second, almost like someone hit a bonus round in an arcade. It was unreal, and nobody could believe what they were seeing. The director stared at the needle, unable to believe what he was seeing. That was the legendary divine Thai needle, something everyone thought was lost forever. He couldn't help but watch, completely caught off guard. The junior doctor looked over at the director, his mind racing as he wondered if they should just go for it and break down the door. The director stood there, thinking it through, weighing if that was really the right move. Snapping sounds cut through the air, sharp and angry. The room went still. No one dared to move or even whisper. Everyone stepped back, keeping their distance, not wanting to get caught up in whatever was about to happen. The junior doctor kept his head down and slipped out of the room. As he walked away, he couldn't help but think that the director was starting to lose it. He figured it would be smarter to let Yang Jun's dad know what was going on before anything else. Without wasting any time, he picked up the pace. Yang Jun's father got a call that stopped him in his tracks. Something bad had happened at the hospital. His son was hurt, and it sounded serious. Right away, his mind jumped to, wondering what was going on and if the hospital director was even doing his job. He didn't waste any time and headed straight for the hospital. While kept going with his treatment, sweat started dripping down his face. Chatting reached over and wiped something off for, doing it in a way that looked pretty caring. Noticed and couldn't help but feel jealous. She wondered who this girl was and why she was looking at like that. Saw it right away. He realized she was acting jealous, which pretty much meant she'd probably liked him for a while now. As the tree. After he finished, he turned to Yen. Yen got the news that his dad was stable now. The worst was over, and his dad just needed to rest. It looked like he'd wake up soon. The guy then looked over at Chatting and told him to open the door. The door swung open, and the hospital director hurried in, nearly dropping the stuff he was carrying. Director dropped to his knees, hands pressed together, hoping the divine doctor would take him in as a student. Watching director act like this, everyone around couldn't help but be surprised. Everyone in the room just froze. The nurses and junior doctors couldn't believe what they were seeing. Director, who always acted so sure of himself, was now on his knees in front of some young guy. No one expected this from someone like him. His words hit Director hard. He couldn't hold back his tears and just dropped to his knees, grabbing onto his feet, desperate and upset. The guy dropped to his knees, desperate to be taken in as a student by the famous doctor. He was so serious about it that he didn't care what happened to him after. Just getting accepted was all he wanted. Everything else didn't matter anymore. The junior doctor watched as one of them just froze, completely lost for words. known everywhere as a top doctor, was actually bowing down to some guy nobody recognized. The whole thing looked embarrassing, especially for someone with his reputation. Kept his cool and threw out a question about the real purpose of medicine, whether it was Western or Chinese. Director didn't hesitate and said it was all about curing sickness and saving lives. Listened, ready for what came next. Director had spent years digging deep into Western medicine, building up his skills and knowledge. Now he was suddenly stepping away from everything he knew to try out Chinese medicine, an area where he was basically a rookie. Some people thought this move didn't make much sense, but as he listened to the advice from the so-called divine doctor, something clicked inside him. He realized that in the end, both Western and Chinese medicine were chasing the same goal, helping people get better. Looking back, could see he'd been a bit full of himself, sticking to what he knew and ignoring other paths. Now, he was ready to open his mind and try something new. The meeting wrapped up, and everyone realized they could finally talk things through. Director couldn't hold back the tears running down his face. He was really grateful for the help from the divine doctor. Right then, something changed in the room. Dr. Yang's parents showed up. His mom saw her son and couldn't hold back a loud scream when she spotted him. She looked at his injuries, clearly freaking out and desperate to know who did this to him. His dad stood there too, taking it all in, silent but tense. His anger boiled over. He wanted to know who had hurt his son and swore he wouldn't let it slide. In his mind, he pictured tracking down whoever was responsible and making sure they paid for what they'd done. The junior doctor motioned toward the girl, letting everyone know she was the one responsible. He was about to step in and stop her himself, but Director held him back, making him pause right at the last second. His dad raised his voice at him, making it clear he thought's time as director was finished, but didn't lose his cool. He looked at the leader and pointed out that something about how the leader's son got hurt just didn't add up. Said it wasn't really fair to judge what happened just by appearances. Off to the side, the mother spoke up too. Barely had a second to react before the boy's mom came at him fast, her face red with anger. She was yelling about what he'd done to her son and how he needed to pay for it. Shatting hit her with a strong kick, and she collapsed. The man stumbled backward, tears streaming down his face. He couldn't believe what just happened. His father's voice rose, angry and loud, calling him out for fighting back. The father glared, furious that his son had dared to stand up to someone important. He made it clear that this kind of behavior wouldn't be tolerated and promised to set things straight right then and there. The cops showed up. The dad took charge right away, letting everyone know what needed to be done. Shot an angry look at the group, clearly fed up with whatever they'd done. He wanted them all taken in, no exceptions. Someone stepped up and the whole room went quiet. You could feel everyone's nerves, like they were all waiting to see what would happen next. Shatting couldn't help but laugh to himself. He honestly didn't expect the deputy governor to act so full of himself. The thought crossed his mind. Did this mean that his Qin family could just take over all 6 provinces in now? The father stopped in his tracks. He recognized the woman. She was from the Qin family, one of the big names in. A cold wave of fear hit him, and he couldn't help but feel nervous. His wife broke down in tears, scared about what would happen with the Qin family now. She was terrified for their son, thinking everything was falling apart for the Yang family and their future. The dad started to panic. He called for the disciplinary team and told them to get their weapons ready. Weapons came out fast. Yen didn't hang back. He moved up, ready for whatever was about to happen. He made up his mind right then. He wasn't going to let anything happen to. Shatting reached out and took her hand. He wanted her to know he was there for her, that she didn't have to worry about anything as long as he was around. Shatting raised his voice, making sure everyone heard him. Hemming stood there, his hands tight around the gun. The adults in the room looked at him like he'd completely lost it. Tension filled the air, and everyone seemed on edge, waiting to see what he'd do next. The mention of the Qin family hung heavy, a clear warning that messing with them was dangerous. Even Hemming's dad seemed caught between worry and frustration, unsure how to handle his son right now. He screamed again. Deep down, he knew his wife was right. Looking at his son, he realized everything had fallen apart. Life just didn't mean anything to him anymore. Whatever the Qin family tried to do, he didn't care. He was done holding back. All he could think about was getting revenge, no matter what it took. The leader of the disciplinary team gave the signal to shoot. Just as they moved to act, things were just about to kick off. Black Dragon showed up with his crew, ready for whatever was coming next. The father stepped forward, his voice booming over everyone else. He looked straight at the crowd, daring anyone to mess with their dragon lord. He spotted them and froze. Those were the same death gods he saw back at the airport. He couldn't figure out how they ended up here too. He picked up on what was going on right away. Yen looked over at him, trying to figure things out. Someone had just called Yi the Dragon Lord, but Yi didn't seem fazed at all. He just played it cool, acting like maybe Yen had heard wrong and there was nothing to worry about. He started messing with Black Dragon, making fun of him a bit. Black Dragon looked pretty uncomfortable and tried to play it off, admitting he messed up. The Dragon Lord just watched, almost like a strict dad catching his kid doing something dumb. He started shaking, scared out of his mind. Right then, it hit him. These guys worked for the Dragon Lord. Even the richest families in the city stayed out of their way. The fear got to him, and he couldn't help but let out a yell. Everyone was tense. He told everyone to drop their weapons, wanting things to calm down fast, but his wife just wouldn't stop what she was doing. People were shouting all around. Hemming's decision to pull back left everyone confused. Some of the guys thought it was a crazy move. Why would they retreat now, especially with troublemakers right there? They expected him to take charge and lock those people up. Even her husband looked like he couldn't believe what was happening. He slapped her hard. She was furious, but the hit caught her off guard. For a second, she went quiet, her confidence dropping. The room felt tense and nobody moved. She stepped back and lowered her head in front of. She admitted that Yang Jun had it coming after what he did. She apologized for everything she'd done before, hoping would let it go. Young Hen didn't even bother to hide how annoyed he was. He looked over, all serious, and made it clear he wasn't about to let things slide. In his mind, just saying sorry wasn't going to fix things. If that actually worked, there'd be no reason for rules in the first place. Fleming dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He begged for mercy, blaming himself for not getting things right. The weight of his mistake hit him hard, and all he could do was hope for forgiveness. The phone switched over to Shatting. He understood he was in charge now and walked over to Yang Hemming, ready to handle whatever needed to be done. Everyone could see that Vice Mayor Yang had a lot of power in. People always noticed how much influence he had, and it made some folks want to look closer at what he'd really done for the city. Some thought it was time to dig into his record and see if everything added up. Hemming's face lost all its color. Panic hit him hard. In his head, it really felt like everything was falling apart. Director turned to, hoping for some advice, but kept cool and let him know this was something the hospital needed to deal with on its own. Understood and accepted it. He then looked at and told him he was suspended from his duties and that he should get ready for the hospital's investigation. Quietly watched as things unfolded. Got asked to look after his father-in-law, who just needed a night to rest before he'd wake up again. The ones who started all the trouble had already been caught, so things felt a little more under control. Director looked impressed. He could tell the doctor was the real deal but stayed humble about it. Wanting to make sure everything went smoothly, Director decided he'd handle the nursing care himself. He turned to, ready to keep things moving. Yen stood there looking pretty drained after a long day. Someone showed up, ready to take her home since Director had already sorted everything out for her dad. She was clearly exhausted, but at first she wasn't sure about leaving. After a moment, though, she nodded and went along. Together, they headed out, leaving the hospital behind for the night. They headed out together. The second they stepped outside, had his phone pressed to his ear, pacing a little as he listened. He just mentioned that the family was done for, but there was something about the way he said it, like he knew more than he was letting on. The person on the other end seemed to pick up on that, and the conversation grew a bit tense. On the other end of the call, a harsh voice came through. Yen listened, and the words stung. She realized someone didn't think she belonged with the family, and it hit her pretty hard. His words were sharp, almost like she wanted to remind Yen where she stood. Yen couldn't help but feel a bit upset, thinking that maybe had always been like this. Kept going, pushing away any thoughts about stopping. He thought about how things could have been different, how he could have done something amazing, but now he just felt like any regular guy again. While looking at Yi, couldn't help but connect the dots. Yi returned, and then not long after, the family was wiped out. It seemed too close together to be random, and wondered if there was more going on than everyone realized. The next morning rolled around, and things moved to the front of the Su family's villa. Everything was quiet, with just a few birds making noise in the trees. Was already outside, looking like he had a lot on his mind. He stood at the door, thinking back to what he heard last night. Yen remembered that was planning to swing by her place the next day, saying she wanted to cheer her up. But the real reason seemed obvious, had a new boyfriend and wanted to show him off. Just as Yen was thinking about all this, her phone started buzzing. Showed up its place early in the morning, catching her off guard. She wasn't expecting anyone, especially not at that hour. He didn't come empty-handed, though. He brought breakfast with him, holding it out like it was no big deal. She stepped out of her car, spotted the group ahead, and couldn't help but wonder what was going on. Every time walked into a room, it seemed like all the good-looking guys were hanging out nearby. It was almost like they were drawn to her or something, and everyone else noticed it too. She started making fun of, pointing out how quickly he seemed to move on after Ching left. She acted casual about it, saying she was just being honest and not to get offended. Yi could feel his anger building up inside as he listened to her. Could tell Yue was only acting like she was being straightforward, but really she just wanted to embarrass her. Glared at Yue, annoyed by her attitude, and stared her down, clearly fed up with the way Yue talked. He couldn't believe how rude Yue was being, the words coming out of her mouth just making things worse. Tried to keep a straight face, but he couldn't help finding it funny. He wasn't usually this quick with comebacks, and now he was suddenly throwing out some pretty cutting remarks. Across from him, just rolled rolled her eyes and looked annoyed all over again. He was clearly annoyed. He couldn't believe new boyfriend was getting all worked up over a simple joke. To him, the guy didn't seem impressive at all, just a big dude who couldn't even handle a little teasing. He noticed her walking by in a dress with a high slit, and it really caught his attention. His mind started racing, wondering if she was trying to turn heads on purpose. The thought threw him off, making him uncomfortable. As soon as those words hit her, she couldn't help but react. Her voice shot up without even thinking. The moment got tense, and it was clear she was caught off guard by what he said. Shrugged it off, acting like it was just some joke. We clenched her fists, clearly mad about it. Watched the whole thing, surprised that managed to shut we down so easily since we was usually the one with the quick comebacks. Then, somewhere glanced back at the car, eager for her boyfriend to join her. She called out to him, wanting him to hurry over and meet her best friend. He climbed out of the car, ready to see what was going on. As soon as he spotted, his mind started racing. The girl looked incredible. Louis Ware didn't stand a chance next to her. He just sat there in the car, not even close to her level. Chin got caught staring right away. The girl grabbed his arm, looking annoyed. Her boyfriend looked uncomfortable and tried to change the subject, asking to introduce him to her best friend. Just forced a smile, clearly not enjoying the whole situation. Held on to him, her presence close and familiar. She had once been set to marry the heir of the family, but everything changed after that family fell apart out of nowhere. Even after that mess, didn't waste time or let it drag her down. She soon set her sights on someone else, showing just how quick she could move on. There was something about the way she handled things that made her stand out. Knew exactly what was running through their minds. They probably thought she switched boyfriends as often as she switched outfits. Right then, her phone started buzzing, cutting through the awkward moment. The boyfriend looked over at the car, trying to remember where he'd seen it before. It definitely rang a bell, and he couldn't help but wonder if it really belonged to them. There was a hint of doubt in his mind as he checked it out, almost like he was trying to piece together a memory from somewhere else. He froze for a second, his mind racing. That was definitely his. He wondered what the other person was trying to get at. Suddenly, someone started yelling at him, angry and loud. It was like they thought just because he couldn't afford something, nobody else could. The words stung. His boyfriend was getting called out as weak right in front of everyone. Had no special skills, and rich people really got on his nerves. Still, he answered without any sign of nerves, cool and sure of himself. Had always been straight up with people, never one to twist the truth or hold a grudge against anyone just because they had money. When it came to the car, there was a real chance it wasn't even her boyfriend's. He glanced over it while he was on the phone. She hadn't really changed at all. Just like 5 years ago, she was still sticking up for him. In that moment, someone started yelling at, calling her out in front of everyone. The threat was clear. They were ready to expose her reputation to all the girls around, making sure everyone knew what they really thought of her. A loud slap echoed through the room, took the hit straight on, his cheek stinging from the blow. She stumbled and landed on her back. The person who knocked into her turned out to be someone she definitely recognized. Looked over, his face totally serious. There was no hint of a smile. He just stared, not messing around at all. He glared, frustration building up inside him. If the other guy kept running his mouth, he wasn't going to put up with it much longer. He started shaking, his mind racing as he tried to figure out why this guy's eyes looked so intense. A fancy car rolled up next to them. Someone yelled from the steps, catching his attention. It was his brother pulling up with his car. He wanted to know if his brother was planning to take his wife out shopping. She looked over at the car and suddenly realized it was his. That's when she remembered the phone call. Tom Lee remembered seeing the same car yesterday when Ting picked him up from the airport. Ting looked confused. He knew he'd sent his car in to get fixed, so it didn't make sense for it to be here now. Nodded his head slightly in the direction of his boyfriend, letting everyone know who he meant. He claimed the car was his. Right then, the guy started to tremble, unable to hide how nervous he was. Ting pulled out her phone, ready to call the 4S shop to figure out what was happening. Right as she started to dial the man fell to his knees, desperate, hoping nobody would call the shop. He'd only taken the car out after fixing it, wanting to test it out and maybe show off a little. Now, the thought of his boss finding out had him panicking. If word got back, he knew he could lose his job, and that scared him more than anything. Weir turned around fast, her anger clear. She'd always believed he was some big-shot deputy manager at the group, but now he just looked down, embarrassed. The truth was out. He wasn't a manager at all. He was just a mechanic. Worst's mind just broke. She went straight for his face, scratching at him while anger took over. Her words hit hard, making it clear she was done with his lies. The man froze for a second, caught off guard by how fast things turned ugly. He fired back, annoyed. He pointed out that she was the one who cared about flashy things, reminding her how quickly she'd gotten interested the second she saw the expensive car. He honestly hadn't expected her to be so into it, but now she was turning it around on him, raising her voice like it was all his fault. He couldn't believe she had the nerve to blame him for everything. He stood there, quiet, just taking it all in. As he watched things play out, he realized that people who try to embarrass others always seem to end up embarrassing themselves instead. Kept his cool and just signaled for the inspection team to handle things. He wanted those two out of the way, since they were just causing trouble. Ting didn't waste any time and got right on it. The inspection team grabbed both of them and started pulling them away. Ting turned around. Got word from his crew, someone finally tracked down the old man he'd been searching for. Ting, always the one with updates, let him know their first checks pointed to the Taoist temple up on Peak. Listened, taking in the info and getting ready to move. Ting wasn't in the mood for half measures. He made it clear he wanted the real deal, not just some practice run. His serious attitude set the tone, and everyone around him could tell he meant business. Ting felt his nerves kick in as he tried to answer. He could tell wasn't messing around. He sounded cold and serious, not giving Ting much time. Told him he only had 20 minutes. Ting's face turned a little red, but he just nodded, not wanting to mess up or make things worse. He knew he had to move fast. 5 years back, he was just the guy everyone in the Su family looked down on, stuck as the son-in-law nobody respected. Now, seeing him today, it was wild how much things had changed. He was basically on top, almost like a king. Later, Ting hurried back. His brother had checked things out. The Black Dragon was already surrounding the Taoist temple where the old man was hiding. Ting just relayed the news over the phone, sounding calm as ever. Everything was clear. Wondered who was searching for. Gave a small smile, thinking about an old friend he was about to see. With that, he turned and called out. Ting watched as his brother got ready to leave, probably heading out in a hurry. Before going, his brother asked Ting to take care of his sister-in-law and make sure she got to the hospital later. Ting nodded, quietly agreeing to help out. Stood there, confused, his mind racing with questions about. He wondered where had disappeared to over the past 5 years, and what he'd been through during that time. Even though he tried to keep his voice down, the urgency in his words was clear. He answered her but didn't give away much. He just said that when her brother left, it had something to do with her. His face tightened as she tried to figure out what that meant. She wondered why her brother would leave because of her. Was confused, not sure what was going on. Ting started talking, his tone turning serious. He explained that 5 years back's dad got really sick cancer. Out of nowhere, an old man showed up and offered to help, saying he could cure the illness. But there was a catch. The old man wanted something in return, and his brother had to agree to some kind of deal. Was caught off guard, trying to figure out what kind of deal it could be. Suddenly, something interrupted them. A car slammed right into Ting's ride. Both women inside froze, caught off guard by the crash. He froze for a second, caught off guard. His mind raced, trying to figure out what was going on. The car door swung open and a man got out. As soon as he appeared, everyone noticed him. He shouted, not believing what he was seeing. This just didn't make sense to him at all. The man took off running straight at them. Both of them froze, not sure what was about to happen. The women stopped in their tracks, too scared to move. The scene changed. Showed up at Peak, heading straight for the Taoist temple. He kept his cool, barely showing any emotion as he checked if the old man was still inside. Black Dragon, not looking up, answered with respect, letting know the old man hadn't left the temple. He just stood there, not moving an inch, kept his cool, watching the scene. The rest of the group stayed back, hanging around outside like they were told. Black Dreads had talked him up before, saying he was tough, but now everyone was waiting to see if that was actually true. Dragon paused, unsure of what to do. He wanted to say something, but cut him off and told everyone to stay outside. Black Dragon wasn't comfortable with the idea, but didn't wait. He just headed straight for the temple. Deep down, knew that even if his whole crew came with him, the old man inside was strong enough to take him out without much trouble. Black Dragon hung back, facing his crew. The Dragon Lord had made it clear nobody was allowed to set foot inside the temple. Still, their top job was to keep the Dragon Lord safe, no matter what it took. Even if things went south, they all knew what had to be done. The guys all nodded, locked in and ready. Walked into the temple, taking in the quiet around him. Up ahead, an old man sat alone, looking like he'd been waiting there for a while. As soon as saw him, he couldn't help but remember the past. He kept his voice low, almost out of habit, as he greeted the old man. Deep down, recognized him right away. There was no doubt about it. As he walked closer, his face went blank, totally caught off guard. The old man was on the ground, clutching his chest where a serious stab wound bled through his robe. Froze for a moment, his heart pounding as he tried to process what he was seeing. It was like everything around him went quiet, except for the rush of his own panic. He wanted to help, but all he could do was stare, hoping the old man would somehow be okay. He hurried over, not wasting a second. Deep down, he believed he could still help. He'd learned some pretty wild needle techniques, stuff people said could heal even the worst injuries. Without hesitation, he reached for his needles, getting ready to do whatever it took. He got ready to start treatment, but the old man lifted his shaky hand. The old man looked worn out, his voice barely there. He knew it was too late. The damage to his heart was beyond saving, even for himself. Looked furious, his eyes sharp and intense. He wanted to know who hurt his master and was ready to fight whoever it was, no matter what. Anyone could see he was serious, and the air around him felt tense, like he was ready to explode. The old man, clearly hurt and struggling, coughed hard and managed to get a few words out. He wanted to understand that he wasn't strong enough yet to take on the person who did this. The old man had held on just to see, because there were important things he needed to share. He took a moment to catch his breath, trying to find the strength to keep talking. For as long as anyone could remember, medicine was split between two groups. The divine physicians were always known for doing things by the book, helping people the right way, and even emperors respected them. On the other hand, the ghost physicians were never really accepted. They always had to work in secret, hiding from everyone else because people didn't trust them. 5 years back, his whole family was wiped out. Turns out his family were supposed to be the real heirs of the ghost physician group. At first, he couldn't believe it. His mind raced. Was his family really connected to the ghost physicians? And if that was true, did the divine physicians really take them out? The old man didn't say much, just gave a small nod, confirming everything. It was true, his family had been good at staying hidden. But there was that one time his dad used his special ghost physician skills to help someone, and that's when the divine physicians figured things out. Back then, his dad only had one thing in mind, keeping his son safe. So he asked someone he trusted to protect him, and the safest option was to get him out of there fast. Started thinking about why his master would help the family or take his parents' ashes. His master just shook his head, looking tired and coughing. He acted like he barely even knew who the family was, and said he'd spent the last 5 years keeping safe and dealing with those divine doctors, not getting involved with other stuff. Moving parents' ashes. He made it clear that wasn't something he'd ever do. Struggled to get his words out, his voice getting weaker with each breath. He had come all the way to after hearing that the divine physicians were plotting against him. Even as he coughed, he pushed himself to say what needed to be said, determined to warn him no matter how rough he felt. The student rushed to his master's side, panic racing through him. He could see how serious the injuries were. His mind spun. He couldn't let his master die here, not like this. He tried to steady his hands and focus, desperate to do something, anything, to help. Every second felt heavier as he fought to keep his master alive, hoping he wasn't too late. But then, his master pulled out this bead that was deep red, almost like blood. He handed the blood-red bead to. This was the legendary treasure from the ghost physician group, something that had been passed down for ages. Now it was in his hands, and there was no turning back. The rivalry between the divine and ghost physicians was already in full swing, and was the last one left to carry on the ghost physician name. The responsibility was heavy, and everyone knew it. The old man managed a weak smile, like he had something left unsaid, maybe a regret he couldn't shake. The old man realized he couldn't look out for him anymore. With his last breath, he let go, and then he was gone. Yelled out, calling for his master. Black Dragon and his crew didn't waste a second. They bolted straight into the temple. Inside, their hearts were pounding, and they scanned the place, trying to figure out what was going on. Every step echoed off the old stone walls as they moved fast, ready for anything that could jump out at them. When they walked in, they spotted on his knees, saying his last goodbye to his master. Black Dragon stood behind him and waited, serious and respectful, wanting to know what wanted to do next. Took a moment before responding, still caught up in the moment. He spoke softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Life hadn't been easy for him. He'd gone through a lot. Back in the day, he was known for helping others, always stepping up when things got tough. But after getting involved with me, things took a turn for the worse. His own choices led him down a rough path. Now he pushed himself up, ready to face whatever was next. He got up and took a moment to check out the calm mountain scenery around him. The place looked peaceful, with all the green hills and rivers stretching out in the distance. He decided this was the right spot for his master's final rest, somewhere quiet and beautiful. The others understood right away and showed their respect, bowing in silence to the Dragon Lord. Right then's phone buzzed. On the other end, there was a voice that sounded completely flat and unfriendly. On the other end, someone let know he only had 20 left. 20 minutes, that's all the time left before the Sioux family's villa goes up in flames. Everything hangs in the balance, and whatever happens to them is all on him. His face shows it. He's tense, struggling to keep it together as the clock ticks down. His face turned hard with anger. This was the guy who ruined everything, took out his master, tore apart his family, and now he was going after and Ting too. He looked over at Black Dragon, making it clear what he wanted. Black Dragon got the message right away and passed him the military knife, no questions asked. He clutched his phone, thinking about how ruthless that guy was. He's got 20 minutes to get there, no more, no less. He knows if he's even a second late, the chance is gone. There's no way he's letting and Ting down. He didn't want anyone to get hurt. Without hesitating, he jumped off the edge of the cliff. The knife caught the light as he dropped fast, heading straight for whatever was waiting below. The scene moves over to the Sioux family villa. Yiphone's ride pulled up, and right away, he noticed a guy up ahead holding a burning flare stick. The guy spotted Yiphone and gave a quick smug grin, like he knew something Yiphone didn't. Yiphone just kept quiet, not giving anything away. He swung his fist and landed a solid punch right to the guy's chest. The guy got knocked off his feet and slammed into the wall so hard that the wall split open behind him. Slammed his foot down on the guy's chest, clearly ticked off. He wanted to see the real boss and wasn't interested in wasting time on someone who couldn't put up a fight. The man on the ground could barely catch his breath, coughing as he tried to speak. The master had already taken off, leaving behind a message for the guy to stay put and hand something over. Not one to just let things slide, wanted answers. He needed to know where the master had gone and what this this whole thing was about. Curiosity was all over his face as he waited for an explanation. He looked uneasy, glancing around like he wasn't sure what to do next. He had no idea where the guy had disappeared to. All he knew was that the item was still sitting in the trunk, untouched. He passed the box over to, letting him know the delivery was done. Stared at the guy, not budging an inch. The delivery guy looked nervous and kept glancing at the exit as if hoping he could just slip out. He was clearly scared, probably wishing this was just another normal day on the job. He tried to get his attention, hoping for a break after already getting roughed up, but didn't even look at him, acting like he wasn't even there. The tension in the room was hard to ignore. He walked up to the guy and wanted to know where his friends were. The man just pointed toward the building, letting him know both of them were inside and safe. He glanced at his phone to check on them. Their breathing sounded normal, so they were okay. Still, the guy couldn't help but feel nervous. He looked a little nervous as he glanced at his big brother, not sure what to do next. Wasn't having it though. He just snapped at him, clearly annoyed, and made it obvious he didn't want to deal with it. He grabbed his phone and called Black Dragon, telling him to find out where the car was. While he talked, he opened the door. He opened the box and stared at what was inside, totally caught off guard. He had no idea what he was looking at. Opened the box and saw all his old toys inside, the same ones his parents gave him for his birthdays when he was a kid. As he stared at them, memories from before his family was gone came rushing back. These were the toys that vanished after everything changed 5 years ago. Was digging through his old birthday stuff when he spotted a football and a porcelain urn. He picked up the urn, pausing for a second as he looked over the collection of memories from his past birthdays. The moment he realized what it was, his face changed. He looked surprised and a bit down, staring at the urn that belonged to his parents. Lifting it up to see better, something about it felt off. He took a closer look, opened the lid, and peeked inside. He looked inside the urn. Nothing. It was totally empty. He just couldn't believe it. Phone stared at the urn, his mind racing. There was nothing inside, nothing at all. He checked again, but it was definitely empty. That just didn't make sense. He started thinking hard, looking at both urns. They didn't even look like they'd been cleaned out. It was almost as if nothing had ever been put in them in the first place. Suddenly, a wild thought hit him. Maybe his parents weren't actually gone. That idea stuck with him, and then right at that moment she appeared. Ting rushed over, his face pale and his eyes wide. He looked like he'd just seen something that really messed with him. Ting ran up to Yi, barely catching her breath. She started telling him about the guy who attacked her and his sister-in-law, saying the guy looked just like Yi's dad and that old Fode. Yeah, the one on his grave. When he heard what Ting said, his mind started racing. Started to feel more certain that something was off. If that strange man really was his dad, then things didn't make sense. Why would his dad kill Master? And why, for the past 5 years, would he pretend to be Master just to help out the family while making things harder for the family? All these questions kept bugging, and he couldn't shake off the uneasy feeling growing inside him. He glanced at the empty urns and started thinking about his parents. A question popped into his head. Maybe they were still alive. He grabbed his phone and made a call, hoping for some kind of answer. He remembered something from back in the day, and his mood shifted. Things had totally fallen apart for him. When his parents passed away, their friends took care of the funeral stuff. He didn't really get to be part of it, just stood there watching the urns get buried. That was it. Later, voices started yelling, trying to drown everything out. He looked pretty lost, not really sure what to do next. She seemed tense as she pointed out what needed to happen. They had to track down everyone involved in his parents' funeral. Finding each person was the only way to finally get to the truth about what happened back then. He knew she had a point, so he was quick to agree and get on board with the plan. He made up his mind and turned to Ting, trusting him to take care of things. Without wasting any time, Ting nodded and headed out to get it done. While all this was going on, was fast asleep somewhere else. Out of nowhere, a voice pulled him out of his sleep. He slowly opened his eyes, still half out of it, trying to figure out what was going on. She opened the message, read it, and jumped a little surprised. Sitting up fast, she realized was right there, holding her. She was a bit scared and her heart was racing. Seeing, she tried to explain what just happened, still catching her breath. Hung tried to help her relax, letting her know the guy was already gone. Was still out of it and honestly couldn't remember what the guy even looked like. Everything was a blur before she blacked out. Her mind drifted to Ting, hoping she was all right. Later on and walked side by side, their hands linked. Let know that everything was okay and that she'd told her mom to get some rest. They both agreed to head to the hospital together the next day to see Dad. With that settled, the two kept moving forward, just taking in the quiet moment together. Nodded, looking down. He was missing his mom. Ever since she found out about his engagement with the family, she got upset and left for his grandfather's place in. He tried to help her feel better. With him finally back, he made plans for them to head to the next day, pick up her mom, and bring their family together again. Managed a small smile. She missed her grandparents too, and figured it would be nice to spend a few days in. Now the story moves over to a hospital. Ting was giving an update. Something weird was going on. Almost everyone who had helped out its parents' funeral wasn't around anymore. Just one guy was left, and he was somewhere in, but no one was totally sure who he really was yet. Gave Ting 3 days to figure things out. Ting agreed, but then dropped some news that caught attention. There was a real chance parents could still be out there. Took it in, not really showing much on his face, but you could tell the words hit him pretty hard. He started to realize something strange. If the Divine Physician group really used his parents' deaths for their plans 5 years ago, then all of this had to be set up from way back. The memory of that day came back, loud and clear, echoing in his mind. He nodded, agreeing with the logic. If his parents were actually gone, there wouldn't be any point in getting rid of their old friends to keep them quiet. He realized it was time to check the messages and see if anything strange popped up. He knew changing how someone looked wasn't hard for someone with those medical skills. If that guy could pretend to be the old man and trick the family, then using his dad's face to set him up wouldn't be much of a challenge either. That thought stuck with him, making him think twice about who he could really trust. There was still one guy left alive and he was important. The decision was made. He'd have to head over there on his own. It wasn't really up for debate. Some things you just have to do yourself. Was just about to head out when his phone started buzzing. It was director calling from out of town. Apparently the director had come across a patient with a really tough medical problem and wanted to take a look. Noticed the call and asked what was going on. She looked concerned, wondering why the director would reach out like this. Explained the situation, letting her know that the director needed his help with this complicated case. Couldn't help but worry about what this all meant. Even director was struggling with the situation, which meant things were looking pretty rough. It was clear this wasn't something to take lightly, so heading out fast seemed like the right call. Tried to calm her down, giving her hand a gentle squeeze before she left. Nodded quietly while listening to the plan. Ting would take him too, and after helping out with a patient, someone would come back for him. Trusted that everything would work out, so he didn't say much, just agreed and got ready to go. He turned to Ting and gave him a quick nod, letting him know it was time to head out. Ting understood. His next stop was where he needed to look after his sister-in-law. Meanwhile, things were starting to change at the gate of. Director stood with a group of doctors at City People's Hospital. When arrived, the doctors greeted him. Director looked over, noticing seemed a bit tired from the trip, and nodded in appreciation. Didn't waste any time with small talk, just focused on what was next. He asked about the patient, ready to get started. The other doctors quickly moved to catch him up. The doctor glanced at, clearly unimpressed. He had expected someone important, but seeing standing there, he just looked disappointed. The ICU was quiet, with machines softly beeping in the background. A big guy was sprawled out on the cold floor, hidden underneath his hospital bed. He lay passed out on the bed while director talked about what was going on. The early checkup pointed to heart failure, and it looked like a lot of other problems were happening at the same time. His organs weren't working right, and no one could figure out why. He stepped up to check on the patient, looking pretty sure of himself. He wanted to see how bad things were and planned to do everything he could to help. Right at that moment, something happened. The doctor stood there, clearly full of himself, tossing out comments that stung. He questioned the effort, making it sound like trying hard was just an excuse for not getting the job done. It was obvious he didn't think much of the so-called Divine Physician, and he made sure everyone knew it. Doctor lost his cool and called out director, reminding him that he brought over just like he was told to. He wanted director to show some respect. Director noticed the tension and hurried over right away. He apologized, hoping the Divine Physician wouldn't get upset. Doctor was just straightforward, always saying whatever popped into his head, without really thinking about how it might sound. Just smiled, staying chill. He didn't let any of it get to him. He knew he wasn't responsible for the other guy's attitude, so he brushed it off like it was nothing. Ding was clearly mad, glaring at and jabbing a finger in his direction. Meanwhile, didn't flinch or react. He just stood there, cool and unbothered, almost like he didn't care at all. He glanced over at with a small, cocky grin. Out of nowhere, he told to call him Dad. That caught off guard. For a second, he just stood there, not sure what to say or do. The request made zero sense to him, and it left him totally confused. Shin's grin grew wider, looking almost smug. He didn't seem bothered at all, just enjoying himself. He made it clear he didn't see any reason to care about the other guy, especially since they weren't even family. Took the insult straight to the chest, his face going red with anger. He looked like he was ready to snap and fire back, but before he could say anything, director jumped in, yelling at him to keep quiet or leave. At the same time, while that was happening, Shin pulled out his silver acupuncture needles, showing them off with a confident look. The metal caught the light, making a quick, sharp sound as he got ready. Looked over with a smug grin, clearly not impressed. He thought it was pretty ridiculous that anyone would use old-school Chinese medicine now. In his mind, the guy was just pretending to be a doctor. Was so sure it wouldn't work that he figured he'd have to eat all those silver needles if the patient actually got better. Just smiled, almost like he knew something the others didn't. He seemed calm, even a little amused, as if he was telling them to remember their own words. Right after that, something wild happened. Something no one in the room could have believed until they saw it with their own eyes. Nobody saw it coming, but did something totally unexpected. He powered up his needles by adding cheese to them. He carefully slid the tubes into the patient, who was still knocked out cold. A few seconds passed, then the guy suddenly took a sharp breath and his eyes flicked open. All the doctors in the room just froze for a second, their mouths hanging open. Nobody expected the patient to wake up that fast. The guy who did the treatment barely used any needles, and still, the patient opened his eyes. The doctors glanced at each other, not really sure what to say. It was clear they were impressed. The patient's face started looking better as some color came back. The doctor watched, kind of stunned, as the guy moved the needles around just by using his own energy. It was clear this wasn't some beginner trick. With skills like that, the doctor figured this guy had to be one of the top masters in the country. The doctor looked at the patient and asked about diet pills. The question caught the patient off guard. He had been taking them but didn't expect anyone to notice or bring it up. For a second, he just sat there, surprised that the doctor knew. Yishin didn't waste any time. He told him straight up to quit messing with those diet pills. It was serious. He'd nearly lost his life over it. The doctor handed over a prescription and told the patient to take the medicine for 5 days. The patient listened, hoping this would help him get better soon. He nodded in thanks, relief written all over his face. At the same time, director just stared, trying to process what happened. All their expensive gear hadn't figured it out, but did, using only a few silver needles. Turns out the diet pills were the problem from the start. Just like that, everything made sense. Couldn't handle how embarrassed he was and tried to sneak out, hoping no one would notice, but turned to face him, cool and direct, and brought up the bet had lost earlier. It was a clear reminder in front of everyone and felt even smaller. Before could even get a word out, director lost his cool and started yelling at him to apologize too. Meanwhile, just stood there, not really looking for anyone to back him up or make a big deal out of it. Just lifted his hand, signaling that he was done with the whole thing. He made it clear he didn't need an apology from anyone. Then he threw in a comment that hit right where it hurt, making it obvious how little he cared about the insults. Words left standing there, pride bruised, not really sure how to respond. After that, things felt pretty tense. Kept his cool and walked out of the room, even though he felt pretty embarrassed. The whole place went quiet, with everyone just watching him leave. Deep down was getting really mad. He couldn't let go of what just happened and kept replaying it in his head. It stung, and he knew he wasn't going to let it slide or forget about it anytime soon. Then, almost like the universe had something planned for him, things started to line up in a way he didn't expect. Out of nowhere, Ding's phone buzzed with a call he wasn't expecting. The person on the other end seemed to know exactly what he wanted, offering a way to take down Yi Foam. As Ding listened, a strange spark lit up in his eyes, like he was already planning his next move. The moment felt heavy, with the air in the room seeming to change as he took in what he'd just heard. They moved into a fancy hotel room. Was already there. He was on a mission to figure out who killed his master or his parents. Black Dragon let everyone know that the enemy was pretty smart and didn't leave any hints behind. He threw out the idea that maybe they should just go after the shady person they'd been watching. They already had enough info, so why not just catch him now? But the Dragon Master was already a step ahead. He knew it might be a setup. If they rushed in without thinking, the person really behind everything could catch on and make sure the witness never talked. Just as he was turning these thoughts over in his head, a clever idea popped up. He started thinking fast, ideas bouncing around in his head. Suddenly, he figured out a plan that actually made sense. He motioned for his assistant to come over, ready to share what he'd just thought of. The plan was simple: cause enough of a scene that everyone around got distracted. The enemy would just see a big, noisy crowd and think it was nothing serious. But right in the middle of all that chaos, that's where they'd get stuff done. With so many people and so much happening, nobody would notice them slipping away for a quick meeting. When the assistant heard the plan, his eyes lit up. The Dragon Master explained that with the backing of the strong Qin family in the city, they could actually pull this off. The next day, walked outside, not expecting anything out of the ordinary. Out of nowhere, a patrol team in full gear closed in, blocking off every escape. The air got tight, and everyone seemed to freeze as the team leader called out to him, making it clear they were there for him and that this was serious. Most people would probably freak out or run, but kept it together and didn't lose his cool. He stayed cool and wanted to know which patrol team the guy was with. The response was straight to the point: City Patrol. After that, he was told he could ask whatever he wanted. He heard what was said and immediately wanted to know what was going on. He wondered why City was mentioned and couldn't help but question what he'd done wrong. Instead of staying quiet, he tried to figure out if he'd actually broken any laws. The officer didn't really wait for a straight answer. Instead, he threw out another question, wanting to know if he had been treating a patient the day before at City People's Hospital. The guy could tell this was getting serious, and things felt tense, like when someone tags you in a post you weren't expecting. Phone's face changed when he heard the news. He hadn't expected it. The other person started explaining what happened. The patient he'd treated earlier had passed away around 4 in the morning. Now they thought his treatment might be the reason. They told him he was being held responsible for what happened. The officers showed up looking serious. They explained that he was being accused of treating someone without a real medical license, and because of that, the patient had died. They let him know they were there to arrest him, and things started to get real. froze for a second, realizing right away that this whole thing had been set up. It hit him that someone must done all this on purpose just to make him look guilty. While he stood there, the police started trying to scare him, putting on pressure like they already thought he was the bad guy. Stood there totally unfazed. He didn't look scared at all. Instead, he just pulled out his phone, cool as ever. The officer started yelling at him to drop it and put it down, but didn't even flinch. His face showed he wasn't scared at all. His look shifted, getting a bit more serious, like he was done messing around. He stared back, making it clear he wasn't about to be bossed around or told what to do. The police officer started to look worse, his nerves really showing. Sweat started to bead on his forehead. He couldn't stop thinking about how intense everything felt, like the pressure in the room was just too much. He checked his phone again and saw it was ringing. When he picked up, Director was on the line, sounding stressed, told him that the patient had died and the police had just shown up. He stayed cool and let his friend know everything was under control. He gave off this vibe that said he had things covered, so there was no need for anyone to stress out. He ended the call and faced the police officer, a small, strange smile on his face. He agreed to go along, but there was something off in his expression, like he knew something the others didn't. Everyone in the room had probably heard the rumors. Summoning someone powerful might be easy, but getting rid of them was another story. Right now, that someone was him. Over at the health bureau, Director was having a rough time. In the office, things got heated between him and another officer. The other guy lost his cool, raising his voice and throwing out accusations. Now the patient's family was making a fuss, and to make things worse, the security cameras had stopped working out of nowhere. Everything was piling up on Director, and it definitely didn't seem like random bad luck. Gene wiped the sweat from his forehead, his hands shaky. He struggled to find the right words, clearly thrown off by what had happened. He remembered that yesterday, a healer named had checked on the patient. The other directors had also been around, watching closely. The room went quiet for a second after the director's voice boomed out. Had asked the deputy director to check on his medical qualifications just the day before. Now, everyone found out that had been working without a license this whole time. The officer jumped up from his chair, clearly angry, and smacked his hand down on the table. John sat there taking the heat for letting someone without a license get involved in the treatment. Director Gene looked rattled, scrambling to explain himself. He tried to make it clear he wasn't the one who brought that guy in. He pointed out that was responsible, not him. The tension in the room was obvious, and everyone seemed on edge, not sure how things would play out next. Gave the patient some Chinese medicine, and that's probably where things started to go wrong. The director wasn't happy about it and raised his voice, making it clear he was upset. Director's hands were shaking and sweat started to bead on his forehead. He knew this was serious. He quickly got to work, sending a message to the City Health Bureau to ask for their help with the investigation. At the same time, he kept a close eye on the autopsy, making sure he'd hear about the results the second they came out. Even though he tried to stay calm, it was clear he was pretty nervous and wanted to make sure he didn't mess anything up. The scene cuts to the City Patrol Bureau Inn. Sat in the interrogation room, ropes wrapped around him, holding him in place. An officer walked in and let you know that someone wanted to see him. Right after that, a delivery guy showed up. Looked up when he noticed the guy walk in. He recognized him right away, and a small smile showed up on his face. He'd pretty much expected to see him. The other guy seemed a bit caught off guard that already knew he'd show up, wondering how had figured it out. Seemed calm, not really surprised, as if he'd already put the pieces together. He stayed calm, sounding sure of himself. Figuring out the basics was nothing for him. If he couldn't handle that, they would caught him way earlier. Just then, everything changed in a split second. Snapped the ropes off like they were nothing. He just stood there, calm and serious, looking straight at the other guy. It was obvious he thought this whole situation was pointless. In his eyes, the other dude had messed up big time by even coming here. Like he just made things worse for himself, not better. The delivery guy froze for a second, fear written all over his face. His first instinct was to bolt, but something made him stand his ground and push back instead. Didn't waste any time. He reached out and grabbed the guy by the neck, his grip tight and serious. You could tell he wanted answers right then and there. He wasn't messing around. Nobody knew where the guy had gone. The man standing there could barely keep his hands still. He looked like he wanted to disappear. He managed to say he was just there to pass on a message, nothing more. His voice sounded steady, but there was something serious about it. The man's glare got more intense. He remembered the last time. Back then, he just had to drop off a package, but now it was a message. He couldn't help but wonder if someone thought he was clueless or something. The other guy, already on edge, looked even more scared. He tried to keep it together, desperate to show he was telling the truth, even if he was stumbling over his own words. He got tossed onto the floor, and the guy standing over him looked totally icy, like he didn't care at all. The man showed up again, looking a bit nervous as he got ready to speak. He hesitated for a second, then finally came out with it. He'd brought another message from his boss. The message was clear. If the blood-red Buddhist bead was turned over, then nobody would point fingers about that patient's death. But if not, things would get tricky, no matter who was involved. No matter who he was or how important people thought he might be, there was no way out this time. Someone had actually died, and that changed everything. He could feel the pressure building, knowing he had to really think about his next move before deciding what to do. He gave a small smile, realizing that all the chaos was just about that one red Buddhist bead. Deep down, he didn't really see the big deal. If someone wanted it that badly, he figured it wasn't worth stressing over. Ben watched as the man reached out his hand, clearly expecting him to hand something over. But Yi didn't budge. His tone dropped, making it clear he wasn't about to give anything away unless the person he wanted showed up in person. No matter how much the man insisted, Yi set the rule. Until he got what he wanted, no deal. The man got up from his seat, probably realizing he wasn't getting anywhere. He realized there was no point in dragging the conversation any further. He gave a small nod, deciding to let it go for now. Still, he couldn't help but hope the other person would actually stop and think about what was going on. Looked right at him, his expression icy. He couldn't believe how far these guys would go just to trap him. It was like human life didn't matter to them at all. The other man slowly turned around, maybe caught off guard by his reaction. He glanced around, keeping his voice low. He really believed that people could be way scarier than any ghost. The person actually after him wasn't even his master. Kept his cool on the outside and told the other guy to go, but inside his thoughts were spinning. He remembered the patient who died yesterday. Only one person had argued with him about it. Sank into the chair, thinking hard. He felt sure it had to be him. The person after the blood-red Buddhist bead from his master couldn't be his father. That explained why only Shouting, who'd seen the memorial photo, was allowed to meet him. Not Cun, his father must have been worried about getting found out. The scene shifted. Director showed up, clearly not happy. He was upset that no one had bothered to check out why the hospital cameras stopped working. Everyone just zeroed in on the autopsy instead. To him, it looked like someone was trying to set up divine physician Yi Feng. The report finally showed up. They found out the patient died because his kidneys suddenly stopped working, and it was all because of drug poisoning. When they checked which drug it was, it turned out to be something called musk. Couldn't believe what he was hearing. When someone brought up the herbal medicine musk and wondered if it was part of that famous prescription from Doctor, reacted right away, not holding back his response. John's anger was obvious. He was tired of his name getting dragged through the dirt. Across from him, the other guy, Yuan, stood his ground. It was clear Yuan wasn't going to get away with what he'd done this time. Neither of them looked ready to back off. Things had already gotten serious, with the Health Bureau stepping in and making an official statement. People online were all over it, and everyone seemed angry. Director's attention shifted to his so-called divine physician, not looking too happy about the whole situation. He stared at his phone screen and let out a long breath. News and comments were already everywhere, way faster than he thought possible. It hadn't even been that long, but word had already spread. Someone shoved the healer Yi straight into trouble. He'd been helping people without a real license, acting like he could fix anything. Now, with things getting this serious, it looked like there was no way he'd avoid going to court. Was scrolling through his phone, not really paying attention to anything around him. Meanwhile, the other guy was getting pretty mad. He glared, jaw tight, thinking about divine physician daring to step up against him. It was clear he wasn't going to let that slide. In his mind, he was already planning his next move, ready to show what happens when you mess with him. As kept looking at his screen, something suddenly caught his attention. He heard some voices outside. It was Director and a couple of others. A group of doctors walked in as security led them toward the spot. Right then, everyone started paying close attention, waiting to see what would happen next. Right then, armed officers showed up outside the hospital. Military tanks rolled up and parked all around the building, making it clear nobody was getting in or out. When noticed what was happening, his nerves kicked in. The military had surrounded the hospital, and it was impossible not to get anxious. He looked over at Director, hoping for some answers, but Director seemed just as rattled. Neither of them knew what was going on, and the tension in the room got heavier as the scene shifted. In the conference room at the municipal compound, the mood was tense. Everyone sat in silence, catching the heat as they got chewed out for messing up. The person leading the meeting wasn't holding back, making it clear he was really disappointed. Sitting there, one guy couldn't help but fidget, nerves getting the better of him as the criticism kept coming. Commander Lee wasn't having a good day. He glared at everyone, clearly annoyed. News about the incident was everywhere, every channel, every feed, all about the same thing. The guys around him didn't seem to get how serious it was, or maybe they just didn't want to believe it. Commander Lee slammed his hand down on the table, making everyone jump. He was stressed, and it was obvious he expected the others to understand how big of a deal this was, especially considering who was involved. He yelled, his anger obvious. To him, that bead was way beyond anything these guys could understand. He saw them as clueless, blaming them for messing things up so badly that all of N City was now in serious danger. Not just them, but everyone. Honestly, he didn't even feel good enough to clean that guy's shoes. The officer was clearly scared. He struggled to get his words out as he explained to Commander Lee that Ding Ching, the head of the city's health bureau, had been the one really pushing this case. Now, it was obvious that something wasn't right. His voice cut through the room as he demanded to know where the guy was locked up. The officer didn't hesitate and told him the man was at the Municipal Disciplinary Inspection Bureau. Not wasting any time, snapped out his next order, making sure everyone in the room understood he wasn't messing around. Without wasting any time, he told someone to get Ding Ching. They had to head out right away, no questions asked. Things were definitely getting serious. The scene switched to a plain interrogation room at the Municipal Disciplinary Inspection Bureau. Commander Lee walked in, straight back, and gave a sharp salute to Yi. He stood there, introducing himself as Lee, the top guy in the Southern Region's War Department. He just watched him, sizing him up. The room felt serious, like something important was about to go down. He leaned back, looking pretty relaxed, and checked out the guy in front of him. The name popped up, and he recognized it right away. This was the dude everyone had been talking about. He nearly tripped over his own feet, nerves getting the best of him. He looked up, clearly unsure of himself, and tried to say that someone like him didn't deserve to be called Master. Instead, he asked to just be called Lee, or even just Little Lee if that was easier. Little Lee showed up, ready to take the Master somewhere. Kept his cool, not making a big deal out of it. The Master was a bit confused, wondering where they were supposed to go. Commander Lee lowered his head, showing respect. He was ready to follow anywhere, just waiting for a decision, but didn't plan to leave. He stood there, stuck in place, knowing he was about to face the consequences for what he'd done. Commander Lee couldn't believe what he was hearing. He looked like he was about to lose it. Suddenly started crying, unable to hold it back anymore. He looked at his master, struggling to understand how anyone could ever hurt someone they respected that much. But his master stayed strong, facing whatever was coming without backing down. Even if it meant something as serious as death, he was ready for it. Commander Lee watched the whole thing unfold, knowing how heavy the moment was for everyone there. Commander Lee yelled off to the side, asking for the director of the Municipal Disciplinary Inspection Bureau to step up. As soon as the director showed up, Lee lost his cool. The director stared in disbelief as someone demanded to know who gave permission to arrest Master. The pressure in the room was intense, and the director couldn't handle it. He passed out right then and there. Right there in the room, Commander Lee decided he'd had enough. He told the guys to take him out. He wasn't letting him stick around a second longer. The decision was final. The guy was out of a job, no questions asked. As this all went down, spoke up from behind, catching everyone's attention. He thought about the officer who'd picked him up that morning. That guy would probably have all the answers about what happened. The guy looked straight at the officer, trying to figure out if he was the one who brought Master Yi to. The officer didn't look too confident. He seemed upset, thinking the situation was totally unfair. He explained that he only got involved because someone reported it, and the big bosses at the bureau signed off on the arrest. That's the only reason he led his team out there. Stayed cool and explained why he'd called the officer over. He wanted to know who had filed the report. The officer paused for a second before finally answering. The report had come from a doctor at City People's Hospital, a guy named Ding. Lowered his voice, thinking to himself that it really was him. Meanwhile, Commander Lee gave an order. The order came fast and clear. They needed to get over there in under 20 minutes. Suddenly, the scene switched to his office, setting up whatever was about to go down next. Kept talking to himself, waiting for some kind of update. The official had said they'd get back to him with the results, but so far, nothing had come through. He checked his phone again, hoping for a message, but the screen stayed silent. Out of nowhere, officers rushed into the room and grabbed, putting him under arrest. Raised his voice, looking pretty annoyed. He wanted everyone to know he wasn't just anybody. His uncle worked as the director of the Municipal Health Bureau. The office seemed to tense up, people glancing around, unsure what was going to happen next. He kept his cool, not showing any emotion. The guy pointed out that even with a powerful uncle, it wouldn't matter. Nobody could help now, not even someone way higher up. Froze, not expecting things to go this far. For a second, he thought maybe this was all just talk. The scene switched, and now found himself in an interrogation room. Stood frozen in the middle of the room, panic rushing through him. His voice cracked as he called out for his uncle, desperate for help and totally lost about what was going on. Before he could figure anything out, his uncle stormed over and smacked him across the face, shouting at him, leaving stunned and confused. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Everything was falling apart, and it felt like all the blame was landing on him. The weight of those words hit hard, like he was being pushed away and left to deal with the mess alone. The anger and frustration from the other person were clear, making it obvious that whatever they had was done for good. All he could do was stand there, feeling the sting of being called out and left behind. He just stood there completely stunned. Then someone pushed him in, stood right in front of front of the officer, who didn't waste any time. He ordered to get inside, acting like he had no patience left, but kept his cool. He wanted to know what he'd done wrong, asking what rule he'd supposedly broken. The officer didn't have it, though. He acted like was only going to take things seriously when it was too late. Then he played some CCTV footage, making it clear his attempt to delete it hadn't worked. The evidence was right there, and the officer made sure saw it. The video left no room for doubt. It showed right there on screen as the person who took the patient's life. He just stared at the screen, totally lost for words. He knew he deleted it, so seeing it there again made no sense at all. Looked over at Commander Lee, making it clear that the guy in trouble was now Lee's problem. Commander Lee didn't hesitate, letting know he'd handle it right away. It was obvious that whatever happened next, there'd be consequences. He dropped to his knees, tears running down his face. Panic took over as he begged for his life, desperate to offer anything, money, whatever it would take to stay alive. Couldn't hold back his anger. He really didn't want the patient to die right there in front of him. Ding, on the other hand, was desperate. He promised he'd pay whatever it took. Whatever the family asked for, he'd cover it, no questions asked. Yi's phone hit him with a sharp reminder. Suddenly, things got serious, like life was calling him out, saying that if he didn't care about what really matters, he'd have to face the consequences eventually. Lost his cool and started shouting. The guys didn't waste any time. They grabbed the dude and started pulling him out. The scene switched. He was on the phone, sounding serious and in control. He made it clear that the public needed a real answer about what happened. The commander understood and nodded with respect, promising Yi he'd handle everything and make things right. Right then, Yi paused, his focus sharpening. His phone started buzzing. Yuan was calling. Noticed's eyes were red and puffy. She was clearly upset, struggling to keep her tears in check. He could tell things had gotten way out of hand. Wiped her face, looking tired and fed up. She just wanted out. She and her mom couldn't take it anymore, not in that place. Understood right away. She needed him to take them back to somewhere they could actually feel safe again. His expression changed, turning serious. He wasn't about to back down and was already on his way, ready to handle whatever was waiting for him. The scene changed to city. Showed up at the old Yang family house, looking like he had something important on his mind. As soon as he tried to step inside, someone blocked his way. The person gave him a hard look, clearly not happy to see him there. This wasn't just any house. Everyone in the area knew who owned it, and outsiders weren't welcome. The tension was obvious, and it was clear wasn't going to get past without a problem. He kept his cool and let them know he was at the Yang family house. Yang was his wife's grandfather, so there was no reason for him not to be there. The guy made it clear he belonged. Couldn't help but laugh to himself. When he looked at the guy's face, he seriously doubted this guy's wife could ever be someone important like old Madame Yang's granddaughter. In his mind, if this was really the guy's wife, then she probably wasn't anything special either. Ended up shoving Yi right in the face. He grabbed the guy and hit him hard. For a second, it felt like things could get really bad. The man got knocked back and landed pretty far from where he started. Everyone else just watched, surprised at how hard he hit the ground. He stormed in, raising his voice and demanding answers. It was clear he was angry that someone had dared to cause trouble in this place. He wanted to know who would be bold enough to pick a fight here, acting like they didn't care about the rules or who might be watching. He stayed serious, not showing much emotion. He had one goal, get his wife and mother-in-law and head out with them. That was all he was here for, grab them and go. One of the guys looked over and asked if he was young Master Yuan from the capital. Right after that, he made a quick call. He shook his head, letting the guy know he was wrong. But the man just smirked, acting all high and mighty. He figured it out fast. Today was the day got engaged, and he assumed that's why someone had shown up just to mess things up. Clenched his fists, annoyed at how the Yang family had already set up's engagement. He raised his voice, obviously frustrated. The young family had really crossed the line this time, and the tension in the air was impossible to ignore. His presence was so intense that one guy nearby suddenly started coughing up blood. Another guy leaned over to his dad, pointing out how actually looked pretty good. His dad didn't seem that impressed, though. He just shrugged, saying it was a shame was from the Yuan family. If she'd been from this family instead, things might have played out differently. Then the dad started looking around, trying to spot where it had gone. Yang Qin couldn't sit still. He was getting impatient, wondering why things were taking so long. He'd already asked someone to bring her, but she still hadn't shown up. Deciding he couldn't wait any longer, Yang Qin got up to go find her himself. Yang grabbed Yuan and pulled her along, ignoring her protests as she struggled to break free. She tried to get away, but he held on tight, not listening to anything she said. Glared, clearly upset. He'd waited a long time, and the frustration was written all over his face. He tried calling, but got nothing in return. The anger had been building up, and now he couldn't hold it back. Deep down, he felt used, like his uncle only ever needed him when there was something to gain, whether it was a job promotion or extra cash. It stung, realizing this was how things really were between them. Out of nowhere, an old man smacked her across the face. The hit was loud, making everyone nearby freeze for a second. She stood there, stunned, while the old man glared at her, his face tight with anger. The people watching weren't sure what to do, and the whole mood in the room got tense fast. Suddenly, someone rushed in, yelling about a guy named breaking into the place. As soon as everyone heard the name, the mood in the room changed. Didn't even think twice, she dashed straight outside. She yelled out, feeling panic hit her all at once. Her mom reached out, trying to pull her back, but was already gone, her mind racing as she sprinted ahead. He waited for a bit, but as soon as he saw you, he took off and ran right over. He looked at her and noticed the mark on her cheek. His arms tensed up a bit, and he couldn't help but stare, wondering what happened. He picked up his phone and called Ass, his voice flat and serious. He wanted to know who had hit him. The old man walked up with his head held high, not even trying to hide how sure of himself he was. He owned up to what he did, almost daring anyone to challenge him or do something about it. It was obvious he wasn't scared of what might happen next.
Lately, I've had a strong addiction to watching manhwa and manga recap videos. Every single day, I find myself binging one after another, losing hours and days doing absolutely nothing productive. And honestly, it's getting out of hand. So, maybe we can make these viral videos too. I mean, look at the views, the growth, the community these creators are building. It looks simple, right? But that's a trap. You go down this endless rabbit hole, spending money, losing sleep, hiring editors and writers from Fiverr and Upwork, and still feel like you've been robbed. Because don't forget how emotional the YouTube algorithm can be with making videos go viral. It's unpredictable, especially when the market's saturated, competition's relentless, and somehow other creators are dropping 10-hour videos daily while you're stuck trying to finish one. That's when I realized something had to change. So, I built the solution, the Webtoon Narrative Suite, a complete one-click system that handles everything from cropping, script narration, text-to-speech, image processing, and full video generation in one smooth process. Save money, reduce hours of work, and have a tool that only gives you straight results. Click on the link down below and experience it for yourself. And if you want even more tools to supercharge your YouTube recap journey, visit my Ko-Fi and Patreon pages where I drop weekly new tools designed to keep you ahead as AI continues to steal our jobs. So tap in now before you get left behind.